Hey everybody, it's Dave Dugdale, learningvideo.com. I know you've heard it many times before. I've even said it before. I've even been guilty of saying it, not really showing it. And that's what I do in this video, is show the difference between 10-bit, like this Sony FS5, versus the 8-bit Sony a7R II. So let's go ahead and take a look at our very first test. On the left-hand side, we've got the FS5 at 10-bit. This will be an SDI output at 1080. On the right side, we got the a7R II at 8-bit HDMI output, also at 1080. Both are going to the Shogun. It's a 422, ProRes 422, 24p. So we're basically taking the codec out of the equation. We're also taking the chromo subsampling out of the equation because they're both going to be 422. All right, these are both very underexposed. They're both using the Cine 1 profile, and I am way underexposed. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I did. And I basically changed the white balance a little bit, brought up the exposure, and really made a major move with the curves adjustment. And as you can see, both of them, you could definitely see the 10-bit on the left is much cleaner after bringing up those shadows. And if we zoom way in, for those people that are watching on an iPhone, you could see, yeah, it looks so much better at 10-bit. All right, in this next test, all we've done is we've changed the a7R II to output 4K. So let's go ahead and look at our base images before I've done any sort of massive correction on these really underexposed images. And then when we go to actually lift both of them, you'll be like, hey, wait a minute, Dave. The a7R looks really good. I mean, really good. When you zoom in, you almost think maybe it might even be better than the FS5. So what is going on here? We've got an 8-bit camera at 4K. I'm putting it on my 1080 timeline, and it's behaving like a 10-bit camera at 1080. All right, I want to stop myself there. I recorded that about a couple of weeks ago, and since then I've added another underexposure test I want to add to this one before we go on to the other test. So I met up with Wade Yamaguchi and James Drake. Wade owns a Red Scarlet Dragon, which I believe at the minimum records 12-bit RAW, which is what we shot. Now, I'm no Red expert here, so I know there's some confusion on whether it's shooting 12 or 16-bit, but I'm pretty sure it's 12-bit. So anyway, I thought it'd be an interesting camera to add to the mix. And then James Drake brought his C100 original, which I believe takes a 4K image, 4K sensor, and downsamples it to 1080 on the fly to the SD card in the AVCHD codec. I'm not an expert on the C100 either, but I thought that was an interesting one because it's doing some interesting stuff, but it's still an 8-bit camera, so I thought it would be interesting to compare all four of these cameras. Now, we're just looking at, we're putting in these cameras in really bad situation. I would never record, I'd add fill or add light or something to the talent, which actually is me in this case on this particular shoot, but we're putting them in really bad situation. Now, all we're looking at here is what happens when I stretch the signal. We're not looking at color, we're not looking at contrast, we're not looking at the lens sharpness, we're not looking at detail. All we're looking at here is how well do these cameras handle taking that underexposed image, stretching it up. How does it break apart? What happens to it, basically? So let's take a look at the test. So first up, what I wanted to show you guys is just a normal exposures. You got A7S on the left, 8-bit, and FS5 10-bit on the right. And here you can see I've just graded the S-Log footage to somewhat match. You're going to notice there's a little bit of difference between the two of them in terms of contrast. I think that's because I had the lens hood on the FS5. Now again, these tests are going to be all over the place because we're using different lenses, different ND filters. And again, we're not looking at sharpness and contrast and all that stuff. We're just looking at what happens when we break the signal apart. So in this case, you're looking at it, so well, the A7S looks less contrasty. I think it's because I had a ND filter right on it, no lens hood, where the other one had a lens hood and I was using the internal ND filters on the FS5. That's probably why. So let's continue. So here's the A7S compared to the C100. And what you're going to notice right off the bat here, and we're not even getting to the underexposure test, so I just want to show you what it looks like properly exposed, is look at the color of the shirt on the C100. And I wore this shirt today, and it's green. It's not blue. If you look at it on the C100, it's definitely blue. And the skin tones are definitely different when you grade the C100 footage. Everybody loves the Canon colors and the skin tones. They're fantastic. But sometimes, I don't know why, maybe it was the ND filter, no idea, but I'm white balancing to the white and the gray individually when I go into post. I've already done it right here, so I don't know why the shirt is blue and not green. So next up we have the Scarlet. Scarlet definitely renders the skin tones slightly differently. And again, you might be looking at the back behind me and looking at that river flowing. You might be looking at dynamic range issues or which one's got greater dynamics than the other. Again, not really looking at that here. I don't want to be creating like some sort of controversial video about dynamic range and color and all this stuff. I'm just pointing a few things out before we actually get to the test, because I know a lot of people are wondering, well, did you use the same glass? Did you use the same ND filter? Did you do all this stuff? I'm like, no, this is all about underexposing and stretching it. So let's keep going. All right, a7S2 8-bit 4K on the left, FS5 10-bit 1080 on the right. These are really underexposed, and I just want to show you how dark it was. And what I wanted to tell you really quickly, those white and gray patches, the white patch, we'd hold it up to each individual camera and we'd use the Shogun. We'd use the SDI input or HDMI input to the Shogun for each individual camera, make sure that the white patch was at 20 IRE. I mean, that's really underexposed. Normally that white patch wants to be at like 90, so it's really underexposed. And to be totally fair here, just to let you guys know, when in post, what I did, and I'm not a professional colorist, but basically what I did to make it as fair as possible is I made sure that the gray patch and the white patch were exactly the same for each individual camera. I didn't bring them all the way up to 90 because it just looked utterly disgusting at that point, but I brought them up to about 65, like the white patch at 65. And then I wherever the gray patch was, I made sure that they were all equal for cameras. So I just want to say that before everybody starts yelling at me that I didn't do the test right. This is how I did it. So let's take a look. And as you can see, the a7S2 is holding its own. I mean, it's not falling apart, breaking apart, and you gotta admit, it's very comparable to the FS5. All right, next up is the C100 8-bit 1080 on the right-hand side. You can see the gray and the white patches match really well. You're gonna see color differences, but what we're looking for here, and you can see that the C100 has a lot of this kind of macro blocking that's occurring when I stretch the image out, and I don't think it's because of the 8-bit part of it. I think that's the AVC HD, and I think the XAVCS on the Sony side of things is actually working better because we're at a higher bit rate. We're at 100, whereas I think the C100 is like at 22 or 25, somewhere in that range in terms of its bit rate, 25 meg. So again, all we're doing here is looking at the differences in terms of how well did it survive being stretched out. And I gotta say, I think the A7S is doing great up against the C100. And on the right-hand side, we have the Scarlet 12-bit RAW 5K footage, and you're looking at it and you're thinking, wow, it looks really, really noisy in the shadows. I mean, there's this kind of color noise, bunch of noise happening when we stretch the image out. Why this is happening, I don't know. This one should be the best because it has more data to be able to be stretched out. So I talked to Wade afterwards, and he said that the Scarlet was using a skin tone highlight OLPF, I guess that's just above the sensor. I don't know exactly what it does, but he also said that the ND filter that we used was an IR ND from Tiffin, which should have blocked a lot of the IR pollution, basically, which we usually don't have to worry about that on the smaller cameras like the A7S, but he said on the red cameras you really have to watch out for it. And this Red Scarlet image was really, really green too when I got it in, and I eliminated a lot of the green, but you can still, the color of the shirt is going kind of blue because there's more green in that image. So I guess the thing I want to say here is, even if we had like a Red Dragon larger sensor and we're shooting at like, 1600 or whatever, I think what's happening here is I think what I'm coming to the conclusion is, even if you do have 10-bit or you have 12-bit, if you don't have a very clean signal at higher ISOs when you hit the S-log footage or you hit the C-log footage, or whenever you hit that level when you have to shoot at a higher ISO, the benefits of 10-bit or 12-bit are kind of erased by all the noise that happens in the image. And again, I am no expert here, and if some colorist actually did all these tests and would actually do the conclusions, I wouldn't make this video. For this next test, I've gone from 4K back down to 1080. And what we're going to be looking for here is a blue sky gradient. And I've recorded both of these in Cine 1, and I've added 32 steps of saturation equally in camera for both of them. And as we pan up through the sky, and this is where you kind of usually see these horizontal kind of arcing lines happening, I can see a little bit of it, but it's really, really slight. I mean, I've seen a lot worse. So even at 1080, 10-bit with adding a whole bunch of saturation in camera, it doesn't look that bad. Now for this next test, you know, I'm actually kind of confused here because I've taken all the saturation out in camera, not all of it, but back down to its zero default level. I'm actually seeing more banding than I was before. It's the exact same profile. All the thing we've done is we've zeroed out the saturation. So what I've done here in post is I've added a whole bunch of contrast and a whole bunch of saturation in post. And now let's take a look at the difference between the two. And sure enough, yeah, I can definitely see some banding. Like, again, it's not like the worst banding I've ever seen in my life. And it'll probably actually translate to be more banding when you watch it on Vimeo or YouTube. But it's pretty slight what I'm seeing right here. And it might not be that detectable for most people. All right, it's me again from a couple weeks later. I just want to stop myself again. You might be seeing stuff that I'm not seeing. So when I'm describing this stuff to you and you're watching this on YouTube or Vimeo, the stuff that I'm seeing, I just can't see banding. I'm going to tell you I can't see banding. If I do see it, I'll tell you if I do see it. But when on Vimeo or YouTube, when it gets, I've rendered it, then it goes up to the cloud, then it gets rendered again. By that second render from YouTube or Vimeo, you actually might see banding on both sides of the equation, the 10-bit or 8-bit. I just wanted to tell you that right now. So when you hear me talking about I don't see it, that means I don't see it in the raw footage. All right, next up is an S-Log2 image. Again, both of these are going to the Shogun, so we've taken out the equation of the codec or any chroma subsampling. All we're looking at here is the difference between 8-bit and 10-bit. And a lot of colors will tell you this is where an 8-bit image will break down and cause issues. And sure enough, when we add saturation, contrast, a whole bunch of stuff in post later, like I've shown here, as we pan up through, yeah, we're starting to see definitely some horizontal curved lines happening here on the 8-bit image on the right-hand side. And as we pan back down, yeah, you can definitely see it. And for those people that are watching on an iPhone or some smaller device, you might be able to see it. So what I'm going to do here in a second is zoom in, and you can obviously see the difference right here. You see all those horizontal lines of banding where that 256 basically shades are falling apart. So what happens when we record internally to both of these cameras and we take the Shogun out of the picture? So FS5 will be at 1080, 10-bit, 422, the slightly better XAVC-L, 24p, 50 meg, and the a7S2 we're going up to 4K. Again, it's still 8-bit, 420. The slightly worse XAVC-S, 24, but we're going up to 100 meg. So let's take a look at an S-Log footage here. So this is S-Log2. It's been graded. Again, we're looking kind of on the right-hand side because the left-hand side we know we're not going to see any banding. To be honest, I don't see any. At least here, before it's been rendered to YouTube or Vimeo, I don't see anything at all. And when we zoom way in, I got to tell you, the a7R2 looks awfully clean. Cleaner than the FS5, if you ask me. All right, so what have I learned so far? With an 8-bit camera, you might want to add your contrast and saturation in camera for less banding. And, just getting it right in camera when you only have 8 bits is probably a good idea. The second thing is 10-bit is, yeah, it's better than 8-bit when you're going to push the image a lot and everything's on a level playing field when you have both images are at 1080. However, when you have 8-bit 4K, I think it's just as good as 10-bit 1080. This makes sense because I used to get a lot of banding on my original A7S, which was only 1080, but I have not seen any sort of banding on my A7S2 when shooting in 4K. In this next test, we're going to be recording internally again. On the right-hand side, we're shooting at 4K and with the a7R2. So let's go ahead and take a look. So this time what I've done is actually coupled the two cameras together so they're physically mounted. So as I pan up through the sky, they're both locked in place. And as you can see, the a7R2 8-bit 4K is looking pretty darn good. I am not seeing any sort of arcing, banding, or anything like that. And this is Cine 1 with a plus 32 steps of saturation added in camera. All right, next up, to change it up slightly, same test as before, but I've just swapped out the camera. This time we're going to be using the a7S2. And this is going to be a very high key environment. And again, like I've talked about, a lot of colorists will talk about how S-Log2 with an 8-bit camera is not a good thing. But when you shoot it in 4K like we're doing here on the right-hand side, and you can see this is the processed image of S-Log2, it looks pretty comparable to the FS5, which costs, what, $5,600. And here's S-Log3, which is even flatter. And most colorists, again, will tell you, gosh, you know, be very careful when you're using an 8-bit camera. And sure enough, in this very high-key environment, a lot of direct sunlight, they look pretty darn equal. So the next thing we're going to do is go to a cloudy day. Still, relatively high key. There's a lot of white in this image. And then when we go grade this very flat S-Log3 image, they both look pretty similar. All right, next up is a morning shot. ISO 800 on the left, because that is the lowest I can go on the FS5 with Cine 1, and ISO 200 on the right-hand side. And after we've graded it, you can see that they both match up pretty well. I mean, the color difference in the sky is very slight, but everything else looks very similar. So one of the tricks I think some of the colorists do, and again, I'm not a professional colorist, when you have an 8-bit camera, is they'll actually add either some sort of dithering or noise to get rid of some of that banding. It might help alleviate some of that. So one of the things I want to talk about next is, sure, this is a 10-bit camera, but when you compare it to like the a7S2, which is an extremely clean camera at like ISO 1600, 3200, 6400, it looks amazing. This camera, to reach the S-Log2 or S-Log3 profiles, you're shooting at like 3200 right off the bat. Whereas this camera, you could shoot S-Log2 at like 1600. So what does that mean? That advantage that you gain with the 10-bit camera kind of goes away because of the noise issues. And let me see if I can demonstrate this for you. So this first test, on the left-hand side, we have the FS5 at 10-bit, 1080. This is the standard gamma for both of them. And as you can see, it's a very high-range, dynamic range scene. So what do? You shoot S-Log3. Now, we got ISO 3200 on the left, 1600 on the right for S-Log3. But when we zoom in, I don't even have to grade this. I can tell you what happens. Look how clean the a7S2 is on the right and how noisy the FS5 is. Even if you were to grade that, you would still run into issues with all that noise. You've basically, what I'm trying to say, you've lost your advantage. You've lost your 10-bit advantage when you start shooting this thing at ISO 3200 because the a7S2 is just so darn clean. All right, let's step up through a few ISOs. So we got 6400. And I'm running it across the snow, which is pretty, I wouldn't say high key, but you're not going to see many noise issues in this particular shot. Now we're at 16,000. Again, the a7S2 is a lot cleaner, but you know, the FS5 doesn't look too bad in this type of lighting situation. But now we're really dark, and they're at 12,800. Yeah, there's just a world of difference between the two cameras, which I think is pretty obvious. Most people would say, yeah, the a7S2 is just an amazing camera in low light. And here we can see at 25,600, yeah, the a7S2 just rocks it. It's an amazing camera. So when I asked some of my professional colorist friends, how do I compare 10-bit versus 8-bit? They talked about underexposing, like we did before, really underexposed the camera. They talked about blue sky gradients. We've done that. Another thing they talked about is white balance. What if the person shooting totally screws up the white balance, really run and gun situation, they've gone from inside to outside and they've left the white balance the way it was and they just totally screwed up the shot. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the differences. So this is the FS5 5600K, which is correct on the left, 4100 is wrong. And as you can see right here, I've corrected it and they both corrected fine, which in a 10-bit camera should work fine. Yeah, you can see 4100, very blue on the right-hand side. This is 8-bit camera. And then boom, we processed it and it looks fine too. So to be honest, I really didn't have any problems. As you can see, here's the FS5 on the left, a7S2 on the right. Really didn't have any problems correcting the images. They both look just fine. All right, it's me again from a couple of weeks later. I showed some of this. I shared this particular video with a lot of other people a couple of weeks ago and some of my professional colorist friends. The one I just showed you on the white balance, one of the guys that looked at it has a much better eye than I do, and he said he could see some issues. So I'm not at his level. I couldn't see any differences myself, but he said he could. So there could be some differences there in terms of white balance. And probably the last thing, and I'll probably get in trouble for this one, is I actually like the image coming off the a7R II and the a7S II better than this camera. This camera I feel just too limited, having such high ISOs to start off with. And again, the lowest ISO you can shoot with this camera is 800, and it just goes on up from there. As soon as you go to like S-Log2, S-Log3, you're shooting really high. And like I said before, it almost takes away some of the benefits that you get from a 10-bit camera. So for me, I love these little small cameras. The big takeaway here is when you shoot in 4K on these small cameras, even though they're 8-bit, man, they sure stand up. I don't know the math behind it. Some of these other guys like Barry, Green, or whoever might know a lot more about this than I do. Or some of the other people that argue against it, that say no, converting a 4K image down to 1080, 8-bit does not turn into 10-bit. I don't know, but to me, the proof is in the results. I'm looking at these results saying, man, this 8-bit camera, when you shoot in 4K and you downscale to 1080, looks just as good, if not better, than the FS5 at 10-bit. So I'm not trying to bash the FS5 or the Red Epic or the C100 or anything like that. All I was trying to do here was show the difference between 8-bit and 10-bit. And I'm doing that for my a7S II course. It should be out here in the next few weeks. It should be on sale. A little plug for my course there, which I don't do that often. I really do need to actually plug my courses more because I work so hard on them. It's going to be about 6 hours long. If you like these type of tests, I will have it in there. Now, if you feel like I did something wrong here, let me know about it. If you're a professional colorist and you have access to these cameras and you really have a lot of knowledge about it, definitely make a video on it. I mean, I am not a professional colorist. I don't use Red cameras on a daily basis, or then C100. Those are the guys that know, because they're grading all sorts of different cameras all the time and they're having to stretch the image. Those are the people that need to be making these type of videos. And I don't know why there's nobody on YouTube that's a professional colorist that doesn't compare cameras. If there was, I wouldn't be making this video at all. So I'm not bashing the cameras. If you feel like I did something wrong, make a video on it and share it with me. And if there's something good from it, I will definitely share it with my audience too and say, hey, I made a mistake. But I'm pretty confident that, when you shoot in 4K on the a7S II and it's still 8-bit, does it turn into 10-bit? I've asked that question to a lot of colorists when I was at NAB a couple of weeks ago, and they're all like, sort of, it's kind of quasi 10-bit. It's not really 10-bit. They're all like very careful to say it's not 10-bit. And I was like, well, does it take my 420 chroma subsampling to 422? And they're all like, sort of, but not really. So again, if I feel like I did something wrong here, which I might have, I am no professional here, let me know. But I think just from my eyes and the level of experience that I have, I am not a Roger Deakins way up here. I'm just Dave Dugdale down here. I don't have his level of experience. I'm not a professional colorist that deals with all these cameras all the time. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I know the comments that are coming on this video and like, you're an idiot, you did it totally wrong kind of thing. So that's why I'm repeating myself over and over again. So that's pretty much it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.